I'm Larry Farver, and let's queer up the worldview. European Parliament backs trans women recognition, signaling major shift ahead of UN Women's Summit. European Parliament has adopted a resolution declaring that trans women are women, marking a significant symbolic step for LGBTQ plus rights across the European Union. The resolution outlines recommendations for the EU at the upcoming 70th Annual United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, scheduled next month in New York. Among them is a proclamation stressing, quote, the importance of full recognition of trans women as women, noting that their inclusion is essential for the effectiveness of any gender equality and anti-violence policies, end quote. The measure also calls for a, quote, comprehensive tool to monitor and counter democratic backsliding and backsliding in women's rights, end quote, while acknowledging a rise in attacks against LGBTQ plus and women's rights activists. According to LGBTQ Nation, the recommendations were approved in a 340 to 141 vote with 68 abstentions. Although European Parliament resolutions are typically not legally binding, they often carry political weight and influence across member states. Journalist Erin Reed, covering the development, suggested resolution places on the European Union on a direct collision course with the United States ahead of the UN gathering. Well, kudos to the EU. I really wish the US could be part of it. Unfortunately, with the current climate and unfortunately our current administration not supporting the UN, we have a lot to heighten our awareness and really do what we can in our community and supporting what we can do to take us away from this horrible trajectory I think that we're on.
I love the fact that it is for transgender women. I wish the language was for transgender in general, transgender women and men.
Good point.
Because we talk a lot about transgender women, and I feel like the transgender men get kind of excluded in a lot of the conversations because they're affected as much as trans women as well.
Of course, I don't know. It might be because like in neighboring England, they have been doing a lot of specifically trans women attacks and changing legislation specifically to target trans women, so it might just trying to be reactive that way. I will say a lot of actors have been pointing out like a lot of human rights abuses with the EU, but like compared to the United States and the United Kingdom, the EU is this like human rights, workers' rights utopia, like craziness by comparison. Like it's just been absolutely horrifying to watch how both the United Kingdom and the United States have been just destroying their reputation. Their concepts of human rights are just become laughable, not just with trans people, but with a whole host of other issues.
And I know some folks, both male and female, who identify in the trans community, who are men and women, and to hear them say, you know, contemplate having to leave our country to have a better life. I mean, that's just horrible. Yeah. It's tragic.
But like I would say, like if you're going, like not everyone can afford to leave this country. I always make a big deal about that. But like for marginalized groups that are unusually endangered, which is the trans community, like Europe is probably one of the better places. Like some people are like, well, what about Canada? I'm like, well, Canada is the Poland of this particular war game scenario. Everybody, you just get a couple years of safety. You're still gonna have to end up going all the way to Europe if you're lucky, though.
Well, I mean, the EU is, you know, like they said, they're not rules, but they at least are putting out a gesture, and hopefully other people will listen, or hopefully those countries that are part of the EU will then put into legislation in their actual countries, you know, protections and for the trans women and our trans community in general. So there is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by sharing them and subscribing to Queer News Tonight.